This is episode. What episode is this, Ryan? Like 18? I think it's 18.
We're doing an episode today?
Yeah. For
Okay.
Research Radio. We're talking about exercise order because Ryan and I are building this program for the hypertrophy camp, which you can have if you want because we're going to show it to you right now. And we got into a little debate about what should go first, bench or squat. And you want to tell them your rationale for why you're wrong?
Well, that's interesting because I'm actually right, and you would want the squat to go first because that is the way it has always been done in the history of weightlifting.
Powerlifting, right? So you're extracting from like a powerlifting meet.
Powerlifting, bodybuilding, any other kind of strength sport, just bro downs. Actually, that's not true. Bro downs.
That's not true.
Squat is not included. So, I just really like to squat first. Otherwise, I'm thinking about it the whole time.
So that's your rationale. It's completely anecdotal because you have to get up for the squat.
Yeah, that's completely it. Well, there's also like biomechanical things too, I guess, if I wanted to be technical and try to sound intelligent. And that all of the stuff that I'm going to do in a bench is going to be like the exact opposite of the things I'm trying to do in a squat in terms of like stacking a thorax and a pelvis and everything, because I bench with a pretty significant arch. So I had to come out of that after benching and then try to reset things to be able to do a squat in the least crappy way that I'm capable of, which is still pretty crappy. But it's not like that's impossible to do. For me, it's more just the psychological component of like doing work and knowing that I still have to do the hard work, and then I just kind of like have that in the back of my mind,
It seems like talking to people, a lot of it's mental, because like if they're benching, then they're thinking about the squat that's coming. And so that, but I asked Instagram and we got over 250 responses, and there were so many people that were wrong. Like so many people were wrong. It's like 58% of people were wrong.
You should have done it on MySpace. You get much better responses on MySpace, I found.
Yeah, we probably would have got one.
I would have usually the only one. So.
It was 100% bench. It was 100% bench. Like I voted as many times on all the accounts. I voted on Steph's accounts. I voted on Flower Tree Center account.
My friend Tom, he voted for bench.
So, and I could see who voted, so I can, it's nice. And but if we don't have a lot of research on this, because it's actually kind of, it seems like a very simple question, but it's actually a kind of important topic. Like if you're gonna do full body training, what should you do first? And if we look at the research that we have is primarily in relatively untrained people, like always. So maybe their work capacity isn't great. But we predominantly see it is that the exercises that you're going to do later in the workout, you're going to have less reps. Whereas if you put them in the beginning of the workout, you would get more reps. And so the only study we have is out of Brazil in 2014 that looked at this, and I'll share it with you. So I'll just share my screen right now and pull it up. And it's this Radimus study. A lot of this stuff is coming out of one lab in Brazil, which always makes me a little bit squeamish because it's all out of the same lab. So this one's actually out of the U.S., but a lot of them are out of I don't know how to say the last name, Sioma. And so what you can see is the bench. This table's kind of confusing, but this bench press group, they bench first, and then this S group, they squatted first. They both squatted and benched at 10 reps of their 75% 1RM. Granted, their 75% 1RM was like 135 pounds. So these dudes are not super trained. But you can see, and then so what they're checking, it looks like the decrement as we would expect when you have like a 1 minute rest interval and a 2 minute rest interval, looks like you're going to get a pretty severe drop off. So if you look at the back, so if we think this bench press group benched first, and these are their squat reps. So look what happens. The bench press group, they didn't have as much of a drop in their squat, but the squat group fell off real bad on the bench. in those last. So it doesn't look like, if you can prioritize it, it doesn't look like if you bench press, especially if you have 3 minutes rest, it doesn't, and maybe that's just because these guys were untrained, but if you bench first, it doesn't look like it's going to have as big an effect on your squat reps as if you squat first. It looks like it's going to have a pretty significant effect on your bench press. But I think the best way to just try it, right?
Yeah, well, there's one thing that I think is really important to note here is that there's not a whole lot of places you can hide on a bench press in terms of technique. Like the bar needs to touch your chest and your elbows need to lock out. And there's not a whole lot of deviations that you can make in order to get that weight up if things start to go awry. So in a squat, there's a whole lot of stuff that can happen, and then you can still get that weight up. So somebody said something on a podcast that was interesting to me of like, and I bet you this will come in the future, is like we really need to see, like, it'd be nice to see training videos of the studies actually taking place. And to see, I think it was Scott Stevenson that mentioned that, and I thought that was a really cool idea, and I don't think that's really that difficult to get, because most of this stuff is published online at this point anyway. It'd be pretty easy to have it linked up. And
you're gonna run into like media stuff because all these studies are de-identified, and so all of a sudden you got people's faces on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy enough to blur out a face and whatever he needs to do, but it's just a thought. I mean, it's really like something to consider, when you're looking at this stuff. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case. Like I would just throw that in there as a caveat. What's likely happening, and what I would assume, is just like by the time they get to the bench, you're tired, from the squatting. That makes a lot of sense. And
well, that was the point of that study. That study was actually looking at energy expenditure, and they found that if you squatted first and then benched, you had more of a respiratory component. So that it was harder as far, and so then that's where, if you're training the general population, that might be what you're after.
Now these guys train, they tested VO2 of these subjects as well, right?
Yeah.
So was there anything that came up with that
so that's the other thing.
A large swing.
Yeah, it looks like, so that's kind of what we talked about. If you're completely detrained, it looks like a lot of these things matter more. Whereas if you have this aerobic capacity, especially if you're resting sufficiently, I think it's just, that's why like a lot of this research is not that interesting to me, because it's in untrained people. I think if you get trained people, like what I've found though is, and this is just me playing with stuff over the last 6 months, is if I do like leg accessory work after I leg press, or after I do squats to 9 or 10 RPE, and I would almost say, like, if you leg press, you probably have to go to a 9 RPE, because it's just really hard to assess where the hell an 8 or 7 RPE is on a leg press. Like I'm done at 11 and I would rack it, but then somehow I'll get 16. And so if I do that, then I'm going to have a severe drop off if I move to like leg extensions or any kind of accessory work on the legs. And so that's where, to me, training frequency comes into point, because we know that the exercises that you put first in your session you're probably going to get the most reps. You're the freshest. Yeah, central fatigue is going to accumulate, especially in the heat. So I only probably got about a 60 to 70 minute window. So there's that. And that's in the literature too. Like maybe I could like have a cooling vest or like drink ice water the whole time and last another 10 minutes. But eventually I'm just going to overheat. And so for us, how we kind of worked around it is, how can I have, what I found is, if I do like upper body mains and then lower body accessories, I don't have a rep drop off.
Yeah.
And so that
makes a lot of sense to me, for sure.
And that's kind of what we've just been doing, like clockwork, is we'll do upper body mains, lower body accessory work, and then we'll do upper body accessory work, which has little to no RPE, and then we'll do our lower body mains on the next day. You could probably even do that in some kind of 2 a day. That might not be as ideal, but that's kind of just what we've gotten to working with, just because of our environment. Just whereas I was in the States and it was cold, and I was working out for like 90 minutes, no problem. I was like, this is a walk in the park. I had to work out for 60 minutes just to even break a sweat.
Well, that's because you guys kept getting stopped to get yelled at by the guy at the front desk for having your backpack on the floor. Was it?
That's true. Yeah, he
So.
wanted me to put the gym wear in the lockers. No.
There's always an exception to the rule, especially if you're Michael Exner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good point. I mean, the heat it makes things like, I mean, I've done workouts like the way that I normally train out in Costa Rica, and it's like by the time you get to that accessory work, like bicep curls are feeling like pretty damn hard. You know,
No, some people are like
so,
legit, like just because of the heat, they're pukey from like tricep
yeah, no,
extensions.
it's bad. Yeah. So the way that you set up your split, I like that's essentially how I'll do my full body splits, just kind of as like a insurance policy, essentially, like that I'll have, I'll do things the way that I want to do it on my day 1 and day 3, where I like to do my lower body heavier lifts first, and then my my bench afterwards, or upper body stuff afterwards. Doesn't seem to be a huge drop off, but I also typically don't really change that order, so I'm not really sure. I have to do that for powerlifting, so that's another reason why I personally do that. But I on the day 2 and day 4, if I'm doing like a 4-day full body split, then I will typically start with upper body stuff and then have lower body accessories, even if that's like a split squat or something like that. Because I don't find they're hard, but it's not. I don't have to get like as mentally focused. And at that point, if I'm already tired by the time I get to split squats, it's not really a big deal. There doesn't seem to be a huge drop off. So I can do my overhead press first or bench first or whatever on those days. And I like structuring that way. I think that's good.
And that seems to be a big deal. Like so there's these kind of these camps, right? Compound exercises first because they're harder, right? They have there's more technical things going on. Like granted, you're not doing a floor routine for gymnastics or something, but a deadlift is a lot more complex than a preacher curl. And so there's this idea that maybe we put the dumb lifts second because you can't really screw them up. Mm-hmm. From an injury risk perspective.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me. But then you could also make the argument that, like, if you're walking the gym at 5 a.m. and you're half asleep, like, it might be a good idea to do accessory stuff just to wake up, or if it's cold. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider here, and just I think the overriding theme is, like, what are you used to, and then what's your aerobic capacity? Like, I think that's really important. I think that will tell you a lot. I mean, if you're somebody who just gasses out really quickly, then you probably, I would assume that you would want to put your bigger lifts right at the beginning. Whether it's like squat, like if you're going to squat and bench in the same workout, I would probably make those 1 and 2, whether it's bench and squat or squat and bench. Because I think if you start throwing a bunch of accessory stuff, just that mental fatigue, by it being now your bench is your 5th exercise instead of your 2nd, like there's probably going to be a bigger drop off. And like just considering multiple factors, like one being your aerobic conditioning, like how used to like marathon workouts are you able to sustain that mental focus and just the substrate that you need to be able to get through that. And if you can't, then you probably want to make your main lifts 1 and 2, or lifts 1, 2, 3, or whatever it may be. If you're somebody who seems to do better with longer workouts, then you could probably doesn't matter that much. What is your experience in the past? All that stuff is important.
A lot of it is just like, most of these are logistical problems, right? For the majority of people, like how many times you're going to train per week. If it's unlimited times, then you probably run like 2-a-days every day, like get as many first lifts as you can. And then the other thing is, like, how long do you want to be in the weight room? And so you mentioned like warming up, like using kind of your accessories to warm up. And so the majority of the literature would say that that's a bad idea from a hypertrophy component. Would be doing, but a lot of that's EMG stuff. And so doing leg extensions, or even doing hamstring curls before leg extensions, looks to like you don't get as much quad activation. But I think we can make the argument contextually that you may want to do like those, like say someone can't find their hamstrings on RDL or something like that. Maybe you do hamstring curls first, so that they're already feeling their hamstring curl, they're already feeling their hamstrings, and then you kind of move them over to an RDL or something like that, or leg extensions and then to a leg press, or leg extensions into Zercher front squat or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever it's worth, it seems that a lot of professional like IFBB bodybuilders do train that way, and I think a lot of that has to do with like perceived injury prevention, and I think there's probably something to that when you're 300 pounds of beef, like, you know, you have to walk into the gym and start squatting 6 plates, like you probably don't like, and those guys, like a lot of times they're not going to expend a bunch of energy like doing a cardiovascular warm up ahead of time, because that actually will take away from their training. So what's like the next best thing, like very specific, they know they have knee pain or something when they squat, they may just warm up the tissues surrounding the knee. So they'll do like extensions, leg curls. And it doesn't mean that you're doing like multiple drop sets to failure of leg extensions, although they typically do seem to do that. Like, but there's also like, you can make an argument for that as well. Like, you know, I think you would probably, for hypertrophy, you'd probably want to get away with using as little load as possible, but making sure that the load is very specific and direct. So that could be a way of just reducing axial loading. And, you know, it's almost like that leg extension is your main lift in a sense. And there might be certain times for that. You know, I've definitely done that previously with when I had like some quad issues going on, just with like blood flow restriction, like where I would do a leg extension, like the typical 30, 15, 15, 15, whatever protocol, and then go squat with bands on. And that was super helpful. I mean, I don't know exactly what the mechanism was that was making that be the case, but I mean, we could speculate, but something like that can be really helpful in certain situations.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. The other thing is, for a lot of people that are listening to this, they probably haven't maxed out a lot of these, you know, bodybuilder type exercises, right? And so like they've always gotten shortchanged. And so putting them first could result in significant hypertrophy because they just have areas that are underdeveloped.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which leads into kind of like, if we're talking about exercise order, we have compounds before, we have lifts that are technical before dumb lifts. We have, then you have to make the point, like maybe you put the exercises that are a priority for you first, because you're probably going to get the best results on those exercises. So if you're, you know, your quads are undeveloped or whatever, if you're specifically training for hypertrophy, if you're not training for hypertrophy, then I don't know why you're listening to this podcast. But
you made it a really long time before realizing this podcast probably isn't for you.
I mean, if you're training for strength or athletic ability, those are very different things.
And I think that's where a lot of the protocols come from as well.
For sure.
A lot of the recommendations, ACSM recommendations or NSCA recommendations.
If you're training to be good at a sport, like you don't want velocity drop offs. You probably just want to be as muscular as you need to be for your sport. And then you just want to be fast.
Yeah. Totally.
And because we all know, like, the best guys in the weight room are never the best guys. It may be D-line or O-line, but like in skill positions, the best guys in the weight room are rarely the best guys on the field.
Yeah. I mean, unless the sport is rolling logs across the ground or something, you know?
Yeah. Strongman or something like that. But even then, like, I don't know what exercise is going to be your priority there. It's probably,
it's completely different. Yeah.
Probably the thing that seems to be the limiter for strongman is grip strength. So you're probably that I would guess training frequency would be really, really important because you're not going to have much room because your grip's going to go out and then you're going to have to do some other
stuff. Mm-hmm.
But I'm not the guy to talk about that. So we've talked about, like, if we had an ideal world, probably we've had training frequency as high as logistically possible, and then you get as many first lifts as you could. Another way that I think people can save time, and one of the reasons that I've had my own gym for the last 9 years is I want to do antagonistic supersets, which is kind of hard. It's a little bit hard, like going back to traveling and kind of going to LA Fitness, and it's hard to have like 3 or 4 pieces of equipment. I'm using that. No, wait, don't move that.
You see this weight room?
You can work in. You can work in. Some lady just like completely takes everything out and like moves it down, and then puts and then she does like
she takes 8 45s off and throws on 3 5s. Like, great. No, I guess we'll just work in. I'm like, awesome.
I didn't realize I was supersetting, taking off the weights, but And so this idea of antagonistic supersets is really a way to get out of the weight room. It seems to be you're not going to have rep drop offs if you got 90 seconds to 2 minutes rest inside of some type of maybe it's pull-ups and chest flies or something like that. That seems to be a really, really good use of time. And maybe you would get more reps if you did straight sets. But if you're just like chasing this tension model, it seems like
it takes forever.
It takes forever, right? And it's kind of fucking boring. Like, like especially if you got 2 minutes rest on a chest fly, like it's kind of boring. And then that's why people are making fun of people on their phones. Like, cause 2 minutes I have clients who've gone through CrossFit, and taking 3 minutes on a bench which is what they probably need, but that's torture for them.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, come on, man. Come on. Can I do some power cleans in between? Like, no, dude, just rest. And so you could make the argument, if you're gonna do antagonistic supersets, if we're looking at the literature we do have, you probably want to push before you pull, and because pulling could mess it up. You might get more reps on a row if you push first, which is a little bit different, and you might not need as much rest as you think on those antagonistic supersets if you're trained. But I would say if you're after metabolic stress,
don't want to do that.
Don't do that, because that, like we did a straight set metabolic work, and if you're not going to get that same type of response if you're jumping around all this equipment, because you're moving blood everywhere, and that's not what you're after when you're after that metabolic stress component. Anything else you wanted to jam on about this topic?
I mean, I think just considering like individual factors, I think it's important. I think you look at the studies and they're nice to see, but if you find that you're the complete opposite of that, then that's fine too. Like that, I don't think you have to worry so much about that. It's just something that you experiment with that you probably figure out pretty damn quickly, like where you're going to fall here.
It was pretty blatant. Like when we started doing it, like when I knew how much weight we were doing when I had leg extensions on the back end of a workout. And I put that weight on in the front of the workout. I'm like, fuck, this is way too easy. Like I'm going to have to go up 30 pounds in order to get 15 reps. So it was some of this stuff. If you're tracking things, it's fairly easy to figure out. And that's the big thing is if you're actually tracking, all you have to do is switch up little things, and then it's probably going to pop out what may be helpful.
Yeah. One thing that I would say is like, you would want to try to differentiate between systemically being fatigued and locally being fatigued. So say like you were to do a workout, like you did a back and biceps workout or something. By the time you did 3 exercises for back that day, and by the time you get to the biceps, like you're going to have some local fatigue already in your biceps. So you're going to expect that to drop down a little bit. But if you did a workout that was like leg press and like RDL and then like bicep curls, fantastic program. If you were to do that and you still find that you have the same drop off, because technically you should be, from a local standpoint, your biceps should not be fatigued from the second workout. You squatted and did the deadlifts. If you find that you still have a huge amount of fatigue that is accumulated, or a huge drop off that's accumulated by the time you get to that bicep curl, that may be when it's time to consider like, what is your aerobic conditioning like? Because that's telling me that you're just systemically fatigued or centrally fatigued or whatever the hell you want to call it. You're not locally fatigued, and then that to me is telling me that you probably have something that you can work on there, and that if you were to increase some of those adaptations,
there's a limiter outside of muscle.
Exactly, and that's important. That's something that because I think that'll stem into other things along the recovery line as well. Like it seems that the better your aerobic system is, the better your entire system is health wise. So if you're finding that to be the case, then you're looking at a different issue. All things being equal, if you are finding that when you do bench later in the workout that there's significant drop off and not so much when you do squat later in the workout, then I think you found your answer. That if that's what you're going for within that training block, because I think all things being equal, if you can handle more load for more reps, it's probably better for hypertrophy. the one thing that I'm curious about is like when it comes to particularly accessory lifts, like we were talking about leg extensions, for example, like if you put leg extensions first, I wonder if it really matters for something like that. Like, because I feel like there's probably benefit to being a little bit fatigued, just like joint wise, going into something like a leg extension. Because I don't know if you want to be like maxing those things out incredibly. Like I feel like it's probably better to already have some local fatigue going in. And I just don't know if that would impact the hypertrophy adaptation at all. Because I almost look at like a leg extension as being probably something that's more metabolically focused anyway, like locally metabolic. Like I don't know that we're like, you don't want to be doing like sets of 10 on a leg extension, or like sets of 8 or something, right? So
Which
like
is
I don't.
sometimes what you see in the literature. You're like, God, what is it? That's
Yeah, like that,
suck.
dude. Like just intuitively, like we both know, like, dude, that's just something bad's gonna happen at some point. Like, so I don't know. Like I feel like for
One
something
rep
like
max leg
that,
extension.
yeah. What the hell are you guys doing? Like, what does that even look like?
I
Like
don't
it's like,
know.
you know how silly I'd look getting amped up for a 1 rep max leg extension, because I would psych myself up the exact same way that I do for anything else. Which, I gotta, pour water on my face and like slap everything, and, put
Gyrate
charcoal in my
around
ass.
for a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm wondering if like certain things are like you shouldn't really care. Like if it's like you see a huge drop off on leg extensions at the end of the workout, like does that mean that you should never do leg extensions at the end of the workout or something like that? I don't think. I guess my point is like I with certain things it probably doesn't mean that you're not still getting a good result from it just because there's drop off. Because we want some fatigue to accumulate. I mean, because we are going to get more motor unit recruitment just from fatigue at some point. Just when it gets to the point where it's like past the point of it being productive, then you're kind of doing nothing. So I guess the other question is like,
Yeah,
when
junk
do we know
volume.
when's that the case? Yeah, like when is junk volume? Like, is there a certain threshold that we can look at? Like, is it a 30% drop off or something? Just off the top of my head, I don't know. Like, at what point does it feel like this? Or at what point do we know that it's just not really productive? I don't know that we really have the answer to that question at this
Well,
point.
I think that it probably depends on the person, but it's probably in this range of like 9 to 13 sets you have maybe per muscle group,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot. Like, and so the study that we're doing is 4 sets per muscle group kind of every day. And I think that's where I've been at, is like 6 days a week, around 4 to 6 sets per muscle group,
Yep.
just essentially just pounding that down. And but that's a lot of time. Like, I'm it's actually probably less time for me, because it's training is almost like my anchoring habit. So if I go in there at the same time every day, it kind of sets my day up for success. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, training frequency, I'd rather train more often than train 3 times per week. That's just me. Whereas some people, because of your life, it might be a lot easier to just maybe you have, like, I don't have to drive to the weight room. Like, I literally just walk outside. There it is. Some people there's a lot more things they have to do to get there. So I don't think we've really answered any of these questions. And I don't know I don't think there are answers. Like,
No.
it's completely individual. I would
Totally.
say that if we're looking at blanket rules, the first lifts in your session are you're probably gonna do the best on. You're gonna get the most reps, and that could be good or bad. That you can kind of use whatever. If you've been doing compounds your whole life, first maybe try something else, and
Yep.
see if that gets you a little bit more bang for your buck. If you have some nagging injuries, maybe you can reduce, like, people who have joint pain. I'm always asking, like, how can we get adaptations with the least amount of load?
Totally.
And then maybe you try some of these other things. But the productive volume, I think, is a big thing, because a lot of people, like, if you think about like when we grew up, it was the growth split. Like, I was just reading muscle and fitness magazines, and I was just gonna do fucking 20 sets of back on, it was chest. I was doing 20
Hell yeah.
sets of chest on
Yeah, that's
Monday.
clear. Yeah.
And then And then like if you ask people what like muscle group is a priority for them, they're obviously going to say like chest and biceps, and those are the littlest muscle groups in your upper body, right? Like your delts are a lot bigger, like and your quads are a lot bigger than your hamstrings, and so maybe by muscle volume, maybe you think that maybe you get a coach and you ask them like, hey, what do you think I need to work on? And they're like, well, you're multifidus. Your multifidus is the
yeah, multifidus is. I'm very good at identifying multifidus insufficiency. I have a good eye for that.
So let's jump into this. How we kind of got into this this whole conundrum is the hypertrophy camp. We have a sample size of about 13 or 14 right now. So I don't know if we can take any more people for this, but if you're really hell bent on coming to the jungle and training 4 times in a row, full body, we can probably get 1 or 2 more people in. Maybe Ryan will blow his head off if you fuck up the rotation though. So this is
not my group.
As long as you're not in Ryan's group. And so this is the lead-in program for that. And so we're trying to get people ready essentially to be able to train full body multiple times in a row. Because I don't think a lot of people are training like that. Would you agree?
Yeah, it seems like it's becoming a little bit more popular now, from what I see in my monthly visit on the social medias. But I think overwhelmingly, yeah, most people are not really doing this on a regular basis.
Either they're doing like some type of, what I've seen most often is they're doing some kind of like maybe circuit-based training and then like a hypertrophy day, or there's different qualities that kind of work.
It seems like more of the strength side of things, like are people are starting to do this a little bit more, but I don't know. It seems like for hypertrophy, it's like if they're doing an upper lower thing, you're like, oh cool, like you've been doing a little bit of reading. But most people seem to be still on like the bro splits, or maybe even like a push pull legs or something like that. So the frequency is they're usually getting a few days in between, at least on per muscle.
I mean, bro splits, I think they exist for a reason, because like anecdotally, you just get an insane pump.
Which is good. That's a benefit to that.
It's a benefit.
Dude, yeah, I mean, you want to run that as long as you possibly can. Like if I had a 13-year-old that came to me and they wanted to start lifting, I would probably have them do the program that I did when I was 13, which was a bro split. And do that as long as possible until they stop getting results from it. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, generally I think people are still kind of stuck on a lot of that stuff. So yeah, this is going to be preparing someone like week by week to get ready for those multiple workouts.
Which brings me to a lot of those exercise order things where they're looking at long-term hypertrophy in untrained subjects. Maybe it's like a 6 to 12-week study. And I mean, you got to think like look at the exercise sequence that they're doing. If they're doing full body, like they're doing like 30 sets 4 times a week, or 30 sets 3 times a week. Like that person doesn't need that. Like, so it makes sense that they're not going to see anything, because they had the stimulus in the first 20 to 30 minutes, and now they're just beating a dead horse.
Yeah, totally.
And so, yeah, you wouldn't, in those type of situations, you wouldn't expect to see a difference in hypertrophy. But I think if we look at trained individuals, you might see something if you have if you can long term, if you can do 8 sessions in a week, and so essentially you have 8 1 and 2 exercises, that might get you a lot more productive volume in over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of unproductive volume, and so we're trying to get people ready to train their entire body 4 times in a row. And so we're having this progression of 2 times they're starting. This will be a deload probably for most people. That's what we want. It's 2 sets to 8 IR, to 2 reps in reserve, and then that goes to I think week 2. What do we do? 2 sets.
It's going to stay the same. We're just adding the accessory.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do we do here?
So that should actually be a 1
IR. Yeah. That's so now we're taking.
Whoever edited this program did not do a good job.
So that's a 1 IR. So this goes down all these mains are going to go to a 1 IR on week 2. And so that's how we're progressing it. And then on week 3, we go back to a 2 IR, but I think they train 4 times per week. So now we're actually training full body 4 times per week. And then week 4 is the overload week. And that's pretty nasty. That's 3 on all your accessories. Oh yeah, on week 2 we added the accessory volume goes up. Some of it goes up to 3.
We are going to make that switch. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
The second day that allows us to have a little bit less of a load spike on week 4. And so
mostly that's for me, so I don't go crazy only doing 2 sets of accessory exercises.
Yeah, like that's what I want to test. Like how long, if you're taking 3 minutes on a bench, you got to think the bench is going to take what, 10 minutes?
Yeah, 12. I don't know. 12? Warm up sets. I mean, I got to warm up a lot. I'm using a lot of weight, so probably for you, take about 10.
Which is legit. Actually, we kind of bench almost
my bench is not that much higher than yours.
Squat, I'll give you. So the Nutrigrid pull-up, that's going to take it's about a 30-second set. So that's about 2 minutes, 4 minutes. This is about probably another 10. This is going to be 12 to 15. So you'll be out of the upper body in probably 30 to 35 minutes. This is I would guess this is going to be I would guess a 90-minute workout.
Yeah. I mean, it should be, if you're taking on average, even 4 minutes per set between warm-up sets and just moving weight around and all that stuff. It's 20 sets. Take hour and 20 minutes or hour and a half. That's not too bad.
This one we might get this one around maybe a little bit more than an hour. But this week 4, this is going to be.
These are going to be some long sessions.
Yeah. This is going to be a long session. And I think that's what we got to get people ready to do. But the other option in the real world is you could run a 2 a day, or you could 4 times a week. So that's why upper full body training is kind of advantageous, because eventually you're going to have to train full body every day if you want to up your sets to these ranges that maybe you probably don't need to go. A lot of people don't need to go to, especially in the beginning. You don't need to be at 20 sets. 8 to 12 is probably going to be fine. But eventually, volume tolerance is probably is likely one of the bigger gains in hypertrophy. And so if you want to get up to 30 sets per week, you're going to probably have to train every day. You could train 3 times. You could essentially, you could try 10 sets 3 times per week. Maybe that would be a thing. But I think that you'd
have to break those up into upper lower sessions or something, though. You'd still be training 6 days a week.
Yeah, you'd still be
10
training
sets per muscle group per day. That's that'd be 70 sets a day.
I haven't seen many people that can. Maybe this is kind of getting to your junk volume. I haven't seen many people who have the capacity to hit more than 30 plus sets in a workout. This is a pretty gnarly session at 29 sets in a workout.
Yeah, for a full body workout, that's a lot. I have pretty consistently have myself and some other more trained people do up towards 40 for an upper body workout. But I mean, that's for upper body, but for full body, as soon as you start throwing these lower body lifts in there, things start to get pretty gnarly around 30 sets.
Because your RPE for lower body, you do a leg press, 3 sets of a leg press to a legit 0 or 1.5, you got no reps left in the tank. You do that for 3 sets and tell me how the rest of your fucking day goes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do that for lat pull downs, not the same. And so that's kind of what the literature shows is your RPE is going to be less if you use less reps. So a 4x3 is going to be probably easier than a 2x15. And then upper body generally is a lot less perceived exertion than lower body. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then by the end, so by week 5, this is the game right here. And so that's what we're going to, and the thing we're after is what kind of rep drop-offs are we going to see and train people? And my hypothesis is that at 4 sets a day, we probably we'll probably be able to maintain for 4 days straight. My guess is that we can maintain work sets.
I think so too. Yep.
Now, can we do that? Could we do that, 5 days a week for 6 weeks? I don't think so. I think eventually,
At some point, yeah.
shit's gonna hit the fan, right? Which is why you change stuff. But it this is a question that we don't in the literature it hasn't been answered because a lot of these recovery studies are all done to failure. Whereas what happens when you go to a 9, like you're not taking everything to failure. I think that people are pretty trained. I think they're going to be able to just hit it like clockwork.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, especially if you're staying around like an 8, maybe a 9, I think you could do this quite often. And we're only doing 2 sets too. So I think the total sets here are like 20 on that last workout, and the actual, yeah, I mean, it's not obscene. And most of these lifts are pretty low key lifts. So we have the squat and the bench, but other than that, and the RDL is taxing. But other than that, none of these are too incredibly taxing. So I think something like this could be, that's another thing that you can adapt to that would relate to hypertrophy. Like how can you start at, I don't know, maybe you start the first week at 7s and then go to 8s and then go to 9 and just see how long you can do 9s 4 days a week, 5 days a week, and then rerun it and try to make it another week at 9s. It's just another, like, I don't know that you'd want to do that forever, but it could be a nice kind of retesting type of protocol that you could do a couple times a year. Just see, every year you should be trying to accumulate more, just one quality that would relate.
The other big thing, like why I think this is going to be good for me too, is just like the journeyman, like punch the clock kind of nature. I think a lot of people like set their workouts up and like they have to get up for certain workouts. Like this is just like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to get out. Whereas I think like a lot of people are way too emotional about training. And so,
I don't know anyone like that.
yeah, like they have a bad day and then it spirals.
No, you got it wrong. They have a bad workout and then they have a bad day.
Yeah. Like,
yeah. I don't know anything about that.
No, you like that doesn't happen regularly. Don't talk to me. Don't talk. I mean, probably most of your fights with Caitlin are probably after you've had bad training sessions.
Yeah, there's a direct correlation between the amount that I deadlift that week and the amount of arguments that we have, for sure. If I PR, we're having a great week.
So this kind of allows people, and I remember Pat talking to me about these. He's like, yeah, I had my my lifting team 1 rep max, like on every day for like, I think he did it for like a month straight. Like every day they had to come in, and he's like, I just wanted them to like not get super hyped up. I just wanted them to be like, this is what I'm going to do today. This is what I have, and not be attached to those kind of results.
Yeah, man, it's funny. Like this is kind of off topic, but not really. Yeah, I just find like with because like I'm a very emotional lifter. I'm a very emotional person. We can just throw that out there. I'm French. Like what am I supposed to do? We've been through a lot. Sometimes my croissants
lost every war you've ever been in.
Yeah, it's just a lot. Like I can't always get in the clear every day. But I find that because this week I'm actually doing like the first true deload that I've done. I mean, I think in like a year and a half or so, like that I've actually
like a systemic legit deload.
Yeah, like reduce the volume, reduce the load, and so like a true deload, like as if if you thought that stuff was important, that's probably what it would normally look like. And because usually what I'll do is just a volume deload where the intensity actually increases but the volume drops, and I think you can still get plenty of recovery that way. I like doing that most of the time. That's how I train most people. I think that's you get the most bang for your buck that way. But I've just been beat to shit. Like, so I was like, I need to do this before start the study and the next phase of training after that. And I find that like I don't need to get psyched up for the lifts, but they feel so damn heavy when I don't. So like because you've seen me train enough, and like I have to, like, if people make fun of me, like it's like, oh, you're getting too emotional, like, but it's like, dude, I've tried to not do that. And when I do, it's like I can't get there. Like everything just feels like a mountain. It's really interesting. So even during these deload weeks, when the weights are fairly light, like they still feel way heavier than I would expect. And I don't think it's just from like the accumulated fatigue. I think it's just like the psychological component or just the way that I'm approaching the lift. So because I've heard Pat talk about that as well, and that's kind of like the Russian model. I think is that they try to never get excited about their attempts in training. And yeah, I mean, I've never like been disciplined enough to really give that a long go. But it just, for me, it's like really hard to not get psyched up to lift if I'm going to actually do something. So I don't know if you've ever tried to like really stick, because when you say you're not getting emotional about the training, I think you're still getting yourself fired up a little bit. You still got to
Yeah,
take carry
yeah. I
on.
mean, I'm just become a lot better at letting go. And maybe this is like, I don't think this is maybe that good for performance. I've become a lot better at like letting go of bad days.
Yeah.
Like, and so like, if I can do 225 for, like 14 reps, and after that metabolic stress block, I mean, I could only do 225 for 11. So I was like, fuck, like, because I'm stupid with numbers. So I always have like numbers in my head. And so if I don't beat numbers, that's not necessarily that fun. But I've become a lot better at letting that go, because eventually they're going to go down, eventually. And so what I think that doesn't necessarily subvert my effort. I think that's kind of the biggest. And what's been really, really helpful for me on that is, and I think that even we're starting to see a lot of literature on this, is the velocity based stuff. Because that makes it objective. Like, I can't cheat that. And I've found, like, even just messing with Jonder, like, the more I can get him to take those first reps seriously of a set, like, maybe not like super psyched up, but I think a lot of people, if you're going to do like a set of 15, like, you're not really taking those first 5 very seriously. And that's going to hurt you on the back end of that set. Because you're not.
If you're seeing a higher velocity on those first few reps, they have a longer, like, endurance throughout that set, or they end up getting more reps ultimately.
Yeah, I can generally pull 2 or 3 more reps out of him if I can get him to, like, I think of the gym aware or speed for lifts or whatever you use. I think of that thing as like a carnival ride. And like, if I can get him to ding that thing faster and it just yells at him, if I can get him to ding that thing faster in the beginning of a set, and it kind of has that psychological component that you're talking about, like, because if like, you've been doing 230 or whatever that is on a front squat, or 250, whatever weight you're at, and that your first rep is maybe at 0.6 or maybe even 0.7 or meters per second, and you don't hit that, like, it's just like ding ding ding, what you should be at. And so it's been really helpful. And it's also, I think that I think that you can have these hard RPE sets, but really have, you're saying that you're finishing it at a 10 RPE, but you really could have had 2 more reps. So that's a very interesting thing to me.
Yeah, I mean, that just sounds like dopamine to me. It's like you get those first few reps, you start hearing some numbers that you like, and you're like, oh yeah, like I'm getting reinforced. Or the first couple reps are shitty, and then they start to get better. Then you're like, all right, I fucking got this. But it can also work the other way too.
You think about the sticking point too of the lifts, and I think you're blowing through the sticking point.
Yeah, the faster.
And I think that's important. So you're using less muscular tension maybe you're using less effort to do the lift, because you're explosively coming out of the hole.
So here's something that I would really like to see. If you blinded him to the numbers, I wonder if he would still get the same result.
I think I'd get the same result if I yelled at him.
Okay, but like, if you, so I like, you'd have to do it like, either give him, like, don't say anything in both tests, right? Give him the number, and then don't give him the number. Just tell him in the second thing, like, I want you to move these as fast as you can on all of them. I think something about having that reinforcement from the number is probably just creating a response that just like gets him moving.
There's 4 or 5 studies.
Because what I would assume, because what you would see, like, because if you're moving the weight harder, or if you're moving the weight faster, I guess, well, if you factor in the sticking point, you are blasting through the sticking point, but you are going to be spending more energy. But I guess if you're factoring the sticking point, then that isn't so much the case, because you are going to blast through that sticking point, so that in turn ends up becoming less energetic. I don't know. I mean, I'd just be curious. I wonder what would be the result, like, if you didn't have that feedback from the reinforcement from the number, if you would still actually get the extra reps.
The research that we had have says that any kind of reinforcement, so like like obviously environmental, right? Like if you got like the environments that we've had in Costa Rica or at Wheeler Ranch, where you got 25 dudes like in a powwow circle just yelling at you, like you're gonna get more.
I'm just gonna leave, but
you're gonna leave. Like
yeah,
there's way too many people counting your reps.
Yeah.
But for most of us,
Yeah.
you just have like you're discordant.
Yeah.
You're like completely lifting discordant. If you guys don't get that reference, read some sex therapy books. It's really too bad. Like I feel bad for you. Like you don't get to have the same experiences that most of us do.
I don't.
Yeah. Your lifting boner goes away. And like
I mean,
I think,
I'm sure that there's a percentage of the population that's lifting discordant, and we can all lift in silence together, or listen to ska, preferably.
It's like like the shirt, like
pretend that neither one of us are there.
Introverts band together in our own houses by ourselves. Yeah, you can lift with me. Come, go to your own gym at 8 a.m.
That's why I feel like I have to give a disclaimer when people say they want to work out with me. I'm like you can work out with me, but like we're not gonna talk at all. Like if you think that you're gonna do my workout, like you're gonna do your workout, I'm gonna do my workout
at my gym, and you're gonna be at your gym.
Your gym, and then we'll talk later. Yeah, no, just let me know. Like if the bar is on your face, I'll come lift it off of you or something after a while, after I finish my set. But yeah, we can work out together, sure.
Yeah, if you see Ryan around Austin and he's lifted and he seems very focused, like that's the best time to ask him questions about your program. It's the best time.
Yeah, or your diet.
Yeah.
I care, like what kind of vegetables do I eat? Yeah, I would love to talk about all that stuff for sure.
Right between deadlift sets is probably the best.
Yeah. When you see a clock going right next to me, so I'm timing my rest.
All right, y'all. So that was fun. If you're still with us, we'll share this program with you if you kind of want to do it with us. It might be a lot different than anything you've ever done. If you're like me in the heat, you know that this is going to be pretty terrible. It's going to be a pretty significant change. My RP in my sessions is probably maybe a 5 or 6 right now. These are going to be a good 9. By the end, it's going to be a slog.
I would encourage people the first round that they run, because you could run this multiple times if you wanted to, because the deloads are kind of like worked into it. But I would encourage people to. We talked about splitting up the workouts, particularly when you get to that week 3. I would try to make it through that whole workout on that week, at least the first round.
Yeah, this micro 4 block.
Yeah. See, like I would try to, because you probably haven't done something like that before, so there's some stuff to be gained by trekking through that thing, and then you could always rerun it again and see if you break that up, like how significant of an increase is there.
And your micro 6 actually, like if like what these guys are doing, so maybe we'll put the micro 6 in here because that's for everybody else, because that's essentially a testing day 4 days in a row. Where you're going to a 9 or a 9.5 on everything, and so then you'd come back around on that micro 1, and then that would be another deload. So we'll throw that micro 6 in here. But yeah, appreciate you guys. We'll try to get more of these out over the next couple months. But Bro Research Radio, we're back. Anything you want to add, Ryan?
Yep. Just remember not to talk to me if you see me working out.
When are you gonna post again on social media? Like,
I got one planned for February 2021. So I'm working on that post.
You had a story once. I saw it. Like, did you? Yeah, I think you reposted. You posted your own post as a story. I saw that once.
Man, I don't know.
Maybe Caitlin did that for you.
Yeah, sometimes my thumbs get in the way of the screen. I hit things. I don't really know what happens. And all of a sudden, things get posted. I don't know. I think I may have tried to do that. Like I may have done that intentionally because I thought I was supposed to, but I don't know how this stuff works. I'll start reposting again at some point. Like just you know how I am with social media. It's so hard for me. It's such a challenge.
I'm just glad you keep talking.
I can keep going for a long time. I still have a lot of body parts to do for the in between, like the
when the
research
internet
radio.
goes out.
Yeah. I still have a lot of.
What do you do? Like posing seminars when I'm not here?
Yeah, well, we've done lats and biceps. It's a series.
Oh, that's what you did today, biceps.
No, I didn't. No, biceps was in one of the other ones, which you cut out, so I'll have to do it again. But it's just it's a series that I'm doing on how to look big without actually being big, and it's body part specific, and it's going to culminate in learning how to just flex your entire body at the same time, all the time.
We've been talking about that for a while. I think a lot of the people that look like resting jacked, they just are really good at flexing all the time. So if you want to be Instagram ready all the time, you just have to flex, and then just make it your subconscious new normal.
Yeah, just don't breathe in, or don't breathe out, I guess.
Yeah, don't breathe out. Just max inhalation, max lats, max rectus all the time.
Yep, it's coming soon. We'll work on. We'll do a little bit of that in the December retreat, I'm sure.
The only time you exhale is when you orgasm.
Which is every time you look in the mirror. You look amazing.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Peace.